Hello, I'm here for the Booktube Community Joy and Gratitude tag. So if you're feeling like you would kind of like to hear about lots of great books, books that make you laugh, things that you enjoy, and the community of readers, then you're in the right place. I've got a whole lot of books just sitting facing me ominously to talk about, but I'm going to try and make it short, so it shall be a bit of a dash for the finishing line. And yeah, I think it's going to be fun. We owe this to Books with Pat, who made the original tag, the idea of talking about joy, gratitude, the Booktube community, how that stirs that sort of feeling, and the books that we really enjoy. So really we're going to be talking about the kind of books that we keep going back to, or that if the house was on fire we would reach out and grab. The ones that keep giving us repeated interest for coming to them. So congratulations to Books with Pat on getting 2,000 subscribers. She's astonished that she has got so many, and all I can say is it's not at all surprising. And she has made a whole lot of videos, and she puts such care into them. She knows the books so well, she can talk about them so eloquently, and she's given so much to the community that unsurprisingly people have got used to and enjoy what she is contributing, and she's got 2,000 subscribers. Personally, I want to say thank you, Pat, for doing Poetry Thursday. There's not as many people, many readers for that, but you've been brilliant as a contributor, especially in that area, so thank you. And thank you for all these questions we've got to talk about, because the tag is of course an opportunity to discuss, and we've got lots of fabulous things to think about. Pat has tagged over 60 people, so there's going to be a huge wave of people, a tsunami behind me, because some of them don't. I've just seen 2 responses so far, so I will be amongst the many that are responding. And I was tagged by Hannah's Books. Right. Well, first off, very quick comment about Booktube as a community, because that's the sort of warm-up description of what we're doing. And then question 2 is really about that in more detail. So I'll just say I echo what Pat has said, that I came to Booktube and found it light relief. I started to find Booktube around about the time that COVID broke out. I can't remember if it was just before or just after. And these voices and conversations have helped me whenever the news on the small screen, when the news on the big screen, the television, was unceasingly bleak and getting worse by the minute. I love booktubers because no matter how busy they are reading a book, but they come up for air to say, I've just been reading this fantastic book, let me tell you all about it. And that's just brilliant. So my TBR, probably like yours, has just grown and grown, and there's about 500 or more books I'm really honestly keen to read, and I've heard of many other books, and I'll say more in question 2, but Booktube has certainly contributed to me. Question 1, fantastic one. Name an author. It's all about joy. Name an author who brings you joy, or discuss a specific book that makes you joyful. Well, joy and laughter are tied up together in humour books for me, which are one of my most favourite genres to read in. So a lot of these books that I'm going to answer are joyful, humorous, make me laugh, are the books I go back to. There's a certain amount of flow over. But here's ones that I will always grab. The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery, more famous for Anne of Green Gables. This, and equally, a book you're more likely to have heard of, Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen, because in both of them there is a heroine who is completely disregarded, is not particularly valued in a certain sense, and continuously put down, and in the end triumphs and has a happy life. So these are fabulous. The Blue Castle, Pride and Prejudice, really short, easy to read, and just so positive. I love this book, Girl Director, because it's all about how to be your own director, how to make movies if you have no money and you're just starting out, by Andrea Richards, with a foreword by Alison Andrews. Brilliant book. I think it's really written more for teenagers, but I love the fact that it's so fun. It's done a bit like a comic. It's even got a flick picture in one of the corners. It's colourful and it's just completely full of how to make things happen for yourself. It's got energy and it makes you want to get out there and do things. The subtitle, so it's girl director, subtitle, a how-to guide for the first time flat broke film and video maker. Well, we're all video makers here actually, and we are working on a small budget, it has to be said, but that book is just full of positivity. Now, appropriately, as I'm just about to start talking about Booktube, the sun has come out a little bit, so it's one of these days. It's a huge amount of variety. We just take it as it comes. So, question number 2. Discuss something about Booktube that you find joyful. And I would emphasise that it's this corner of Booktube which tends to be keen on seriously discussing books and genuinely interested in books. We're not here to earn 1 million subscribers and be some big name or other. We're here for the books. So, bearing that in mind, something about Booktube that you find joyful. I love the jokes, the humour, the banter between each other, the company at any hour of day or night, just when you need it. Doesn't matter when you're awake. If you fancy a bit of cheer for somebody to exude excitement over a particular book, you can find it on Booktube. I love the fact that it's parts of the world that are represented. And so now I know people in Holland and Canada and America, and if things happen in the world that I hear about, I think, oh, how's that going to affect them if it's in their neck of the woods? So I think it widens your world. You're likely to hear about the obscure book that you'll hear about nowhere else. I like it that it's older books that get discussed. It's not just what are the books in the top 10, top 50 books at the moment. I love the real enthusiasm of the books talk and the getting to know people. You just see a book and think, oh, that person I know, that booktuber would love that book, because you know each other well enough in terms of book reading. And the priorities are in the right place. So often you will see somebody say, I've just moved house, so I haven't read very much this week, but I must tell you about this book. So the genuine interest in books is there for sure. And I love that about this corner of Booktube. Now, the next question is following on almost, is about friendship, about books that focus primarily on friendship. And I have got one which has the word friend in its title, but I don't think the two people it talks about really actually were friends. I'll just lean over and get the book, excuse me. So, Matisse, Picasso, the story of their rivalry and friendship. Well, I think it was rivalry almost all the way, certainly on the part of this particular person. But this is a joy to me to read, because between the two of them flows what is happening in the 20th century in art. People they work with, the dealers they work with, the artists who are their friends, what is successful, how sometimes Picasso's work tends to reflect a little bit on Matisse, or Matisse sees something in the work of Picasso or another painter and then takes it and moves it forward. He doesn't copy, but it nudges him forward in his path. So that's friendship. I have a book which is really a spiritual memoir with a great title, Love and Salt, a spiritual friendship shared in letters. I'm a sucker for letters. So it's two women talking about their quest for being with God and with prayer, and their life goes through changes as they meet people. They meet their husbands, they marry, they have kids, or various things happen to them that are easier or more difficult, and they really honestly write to each other. So, and we get to benefit, and it's a real true story. So if you're interested in biography, that could be something for you. And speaking of letters, Oh, I just had to knock the microphone and the camera because this is a really big book. Maybe I'll lean back. Letters of Note by Shawn Usher. Correspondence deserving of a wider audience, and it is. So there's a friendliness and a sense in the writing. Sometimes, of course, the letters are more maybe annoyed, but quite often it's between members of families, maybe a father giving advice to a son or daughter, and it's fabulous. It is from a time when writing a letter was like a conversation. It was expected that the person receiving it would read it as a personal statement, as if you were there physically in person, much more like we are here talking, and then there would be likely to be a response, and it was going to be a two-way exchange of information. So there's a certain friendship in that. Then I more recently came across A Friendship of Writers, Bandersnatch, which is about C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, and the creative collaboration of the Inklings. And it's a book which is encouraging people to get together in writing groups and critique groups in the same way as the Inklings did. And that was definitely founded on the friendship of Lewis and Tolkien. And of course that's going to be of interest if you're interested in either of them as writers anyway. And then, this is going to be another big book. I'm going to try and get it round without banging things. Monty Python. They weren't all friends with each other deeply, but they were in writing partnerships. And of course, as they produced and worked together, they had friends they wanted to work with in the TV world. And it's all this kind of nucleus of creativity coming together. And in amongst that, there are some very significant friendships. How are you doing? We're about halfway through this tag. And the biggest collection of books, I think, pretty much is coming up now, because it's on humour. Which author or book makes you laugh? Okay, I want to talk about an Edwardian short story writer called Saki, S-A-K-I. And this is the Penguin Popular Classics, The Best of Saki. Unfortunately, it's quite short. He died in the First World War, I think, in active duty. But he totally punctures the pomposity of Edwardian society, and he is, it's like he takes this really polite way of being and then he throws in this curveball. Quite often a character called Clovis who will act on what he knows are people's assumptions and totally challenge them in a strange ways. And it's quite fun. And just had a landslide. Oh. And this is the cause for the landslide. A huge book. Probably the book that I would take with me on a desert island if pushed. The Oxford Book of Humorous Prose. And I just have a look at the size of this. Be better that way. I'm trying to see it in the camera. Anyway, it is 500 years of humorous prose. That's why it's so big. And they're selected by Frank Muir, who writes a little introduction to each section, who is a very well-known BBC comedy consultant and producer and just, all-round comedy knowing person. And it's brilliant. There is always something to find out about. There's somebody new to discover or somebody older. For example, in amongst here we have got the stories by Conan Doyle, who's better known for Sherlock Holmes, of course, and he wrote about a brigadier who was French and hadn't any clue of different things. And there's a hilarious story in this where he plays cricket, but he doesn't play it as a genteel kind of sport. He plays it like a sort of attack because he doesn't understand the rules. So you've got all that sort of thing. Let me see. Let me give you a few of these names. See if you can find some that are more known. Alexander Pope, Jonathan Swift, Benjamin Franklin, E.B. White, Thurber, James Thurber, S.J. Perelman, and so forth. Delafield. And he writes up, the last one he finishes with is P.G. Wodehouse. So many hours of fun in this book. Just love it. And the way that he describes them, that Frank Muir will describe them in a few paragraphs before you read the excerpt, are excellent as well. They're written with a really smart sense of humour. Speaking of British humour, Rick Crompton wrote a whole series about a little boy called William who was out to live his life for fun and adventure, and that didn't really fit well with the society of his times, which expected him to somehow always look immaculate. So as a random selection, I have William's Crowded Hours. But if you can make the time to listen to an audiobook, listen to any of the William stories read by Martin Jarvis, Jarvis. They are a joy, an absolute shout out loud joy. Because in situations you can quite clearly see the adults thinking this is going to be the way it's going to be, and William is going, I want to go that way, and the two come to grief together. So that's worth it. Okay, how are we doing? We are at question 5, and we're looking for books with the idea of community at the core. So, following on from our humour and what makes us laugh and smile, complete Map and Lucia. Hours of fun in reading this, just hours of fun. They're by E.F. Benson, and these books are a really simple, cheap way to buy them. Wordsworth classics. The spine is going to take the reading you want to give it, and it's one of these softer ones, so it lies open pretty easily. It's good to read, it's light in the hand, and I completely recommend. Map and Lucia, about a little English village which is riven by ambition to be heads of committees and other sort of small jobs, and all the little niceties of who's in control or who appears at most advantage or who's the one making big decisions, which really are tiny ones. And there's also a look at artistic communities and the mayoral kind of things and running committees and being in the town council and making decisions about things and the whole attitude to the local area. Absolutely hilarious, because Map and Lucia are two extremely strong-minded women who are determined to be in charge. And the books go through 2 different villages where they're in control, and then eventually one of them comes to live in the other one's village. And there is fur flying. And nothing majorly horrible is going to happen to anybody. It's just all this behind the scenes little digs and trying to appear a certain way. It's hilarious. Comedy of manners. Another community, the science community. Now, we don't maybe tend to think of this as being full of humour, but I want to show you evidence that there actually is with the Journal of Irreproducible Results. And this is where scientists have written in, based on what they know, and they're writing utter nonsense, but in very, very scientific language. It is rather fantastic. And it gives you columns of words, fairly meaningless management speak, and then it says, you know, how to write a departmental memo. Just pick one word from one and one from the other and one from the other. So you have all these phrases and you just read them across, pick one from each column and write a memo. So Let's see what we've got here. I'm going to have to hold this at length here. So from one column you might pick the word traditional, the next one you might pick the word focal, and the next one you might pick the word identities. So traditional focal identities. Yeah, what does that actually mean? Who knows? Very good. And the next page facing, a verbal Rorschach, an antidote for technically obnubulated appellation. Well, that I'll have to have a look at when I put this down. But what is it? Title of a document, Dispersion Techniques in Field Theory. Translation, Fun on a Field Trip. Title, Woolen-Weber Arrays Using Doublet Aerials. Translation, a death-defying double trapeze act featuring the famous flying Woolen-Webers. So there we go. I'm sure scientists would get even more jokes and all of that than I will. Finally, community, quilting. I'm going to be bringing up my big gun, so to speak. My biggest book. Gee's Bend, The Architecture of the Quilts. Which accompanies an exhibition and very much showed how the architecture of the area around the Gee's Bend was portrayed in the quilts. There was lots of sort of broken woodwork and different things, irregular patterns, and guess what? Irregular patterns like that turned up in the quilting. So we're getting towards the end now, just 6. Discuss a communal reading experience. Okay, communal reading experience, recently co-hosting Framed in September, reading about books and art readathon. Reading about books and art, and also taking part in making art. That was great. It was exciting because people kept contributing, and then some people just got really into it, which was brilliant, and were making lots of videos, visiting art exhibitions and finding more and more books in the shelves they hadn't lifted off for a while that were art books, and talking about exhibitions they'd visited in the past. And that was really great for me because I love art. I mean, my reading life really is an art readathon all the time. So at the end of the month, I was kind of like, why have you all stopped talking about art? Why? What's wrong? And then you go, it was for that time. Everyone else has moved on. There's other readathons that are coming along, and they're good as well, of course. So that was a really good experience. My first time co-hosting. Also just being part of the Read Aloud, Pride and Prejudice, with added comments by Steve. I love reading aloud myself. And I find audiobooks quite disappointing sometimes in who they match up to read certain books. And I've begun to think maybe I'll need to record myself reading some of my favourite books. And maybe I should do that for more people. If you're interested in the books that I've been talking about and maybe hearing them, having me read them to you, let me know. And so we move on to the final question. 7, gratitude. A book in which a character demonstrates real gratitude, or name a book that left you feeling a sense of gratitude. So we're leaving on a high, aren't we? Fiction. One of my favourite books, The Enchanted April by Elisabeth von Arnim. And a story about a group of women who go on a holiday together internationally, just across to Italy, so to speak, from drab England, and they get time to think about themselves, their lives, the people around them, and they come back to life with more of a sense of gratitude and a more positive aspect, and it's beautiful. I am grateful for this book. I'm so glad it was written, and it's called Daily Rituals, Women at Work. It's by Mason Curry, and it's about lots of famous achievers, women, especially in the creative field, and asks how did they manage to juggle their lives. How did they manage to get enough money coming through to make the work they wanted to? And they solved it in all sorts of different ways. And I love that because it is so real. Little tiny bits, maybe about a page each, and illustrations. And every time I pick it up, you feel all these lives are saying to you, go on, do that thing that you think you might want to do. Go for it, because they all did. And finally, a book that is so good for all of us who love books and appreciate them. Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, which reminds us all over again of what it's like to have books in our lives, what it's doing for us, how important it is, that it may not always be cherished or allowed, that it is a freedom to read a book in your own private world, but also to talk about it with other people as we are doing now and express free opinions. It's a joy. Now, at the bottom of the list, I think I have a final note. Let me see if I can move a whole lot of books and see. Oh yes, it's a job of tagging people. I'm going to tag people I've actually met as YouTubers on. Yes, one of them was online, but nevertheless there was enough evidence that they were real. So YouTubers I have met, I tag the Margaret at MargaretPinard, Sandra at Pull Down the Moon, Camilla at hasteyebooks. We had a get together in person earlier in the year. I also tag my co-hosts on the recent Framed. I tag Books and Bookines, that's Elizabeth. Lindy at lindysmagpiereads. Hannah has already done this tag, so that's fine. And Gregg at anotherbibliophilereads. Shawn at shawnbreathesbooks, who interviewed me by video. And Felicity at My Home is a Library, because she hasn't recently made videos, but she's so worth hearing and her collection of books is astonishing. So I hope you've enjoyed this. You probably haven't watched it all because it'll be quite long, but that it's given you something fun to feel joyful about, books that make you go, oh yes, I want to read that book now, and that you do read them and enjoy them as well. Let me know. Do leave a comment to say how you find this and how you find the books. And I'll say bye for now.